To the ball game.
Good morning, and welcome to Take Me Out to the Ball Game as we get you caught up in the world of sports in just a flash. Okay, let's go ahead and dive into the medal count for the Summer Olympics. United States is back up on top, 77-69 over China overall. China still holds a 32-25 advantage in gold medals. The Russian Olympic Committee, as they are now calling themselves, they are in third place with 52. Thursday morning, you'll be looking at the United States in the semifinals of baseball, and that's at 6 a.m. Eastern. So make sure to set your clock to that. Obviously, it'll all be replayed during the day. So we only have a few more days here of the Olympics, and a lot of the big medals, the ones that a lot of people pay attention to, they're coming down to the final. And so, you still have track and field, you got swimming, you got the water polo, you've got the baseball, like I just talked about, basketball. The men's are in the semifinals. So a lot of things going on in the world of the Olympics as we tail off for essentially 4 more days of Olympic watching. And then you have the closing ceremonies that will close out on Sunday. I don't know how many people will actually watch that. It's usually very big number, very dramatic. It's going to be different this year because there's no fans in the stands because of the COVID shutdown. So we'll see what happens with that, but I'm not expecting a very big number. Okay. Item number 2. This is the big one. The Big 12 and Pac-12. They met yesterday on the two of them had a meeting. The commissioners and their offices had a meeting, and basically how it was being portrayed was this isn't necessarily going to mean that the two are going to combine forces, but they were talking about the possibility and what it means for both conferences going forward and what would happen if this and that and whatnot. I do believe there's going to be a breakup of the Big 12 essentially, and they will absorb quite a few teams into the Pac-12. Now, how many, I don't know, but my guess is that the Pac-12 ends up with a total of 20 teams. And my guess is they're going to absorb the state of Texas for sure. There's 3 teams that sit there in the state of Texas that they would definitely, it makes logical sense that the state of Texas would head west because there's not a lot of options out there. I guess they could be absorbed into the Big 10, but geographically that seems a little weirder than even going to the Pac-12. So the Iowa State, I believe, ends up in the Big 10. It just makes a lot of sense. Kansas and Kansas State, that will be the big question. Do they head to the Pac-12, or do they? And I do believe that they'll rename the conference. They probably won't even give it a number name anymore, which would make a lot of sense. ACC and SEC aren't named for a reason because you never know how many teams you're going to end up with. So I believe that the Pac-12 will be called something, the Pacific something, whatever. But the point being, Iowa State, I believe, ends up in the Big 10. I would be shocked if they are not. And Kansas and Kansas State, that will be the big caveat. Do they head to the Big 10, which seems organic, and it seems like that's where they belong, or do they head west? Oklahoma State, that's another one. That's another head scratcher. I think it's pretty likely that Oklahoma State ends up in the Pac-12, but Big 10 could be an option for them. I believe West Virginia goes to the ACC. Now, whether they take anyone with them would be up for debate. I'm sure the ACC would try one last grasp at trying to grab Notre Dame so that they would have even teams and a big get. West Virginia is a good get. Notre Dame would be a huge get. But if they could not work that out, then the ACC might absorb one of these other teams in the Big 12 that I believe within 2 to 3 years, it will crumble and fall apart. The Big 12 was Oklahoma and Texas. Okay, we move on from that. Major League Baseball standings real quick. In the National League East last night, Braves won, Mets lost, Phillies won. So Yankees won in the AL East. The Rays lost. The Red Sox lost. The Blue Jays won. And so we don't have time to rattle off all the scores, but this is what the standings look like going into today. You've got the Tampa Bay Rays with a 1-game lead over Boston. They've got a 6-game lead over the Yankees. Chicago White Sox still 9.5 comfortably ahead of the Indians, as the White Sox have won 2 in a row and are looking pretty good for the postseason. Overall, they're right there in the hunt with the Astros, Rays, and themselves for the best record in the American League. We'll pay more attention to that come September, but that is something to keep an eye on. Houston, they have a 5.5 game lead as they went into LA yesterday and beat the Dodgers in their home stadium. And that is a big deal, obviously, because that is the first time that the Dodgers played the Astros in Los Angeles since this cheating scandal came out last year. McCullers was phenomenal, 3-0 win. So they kind of shut up a lot of damn people last night, although different years, different rosters. So in the grand scheme of things, I think most people with a level head will say, whatever, dude. And Oakland, they are still in the hunt with the wild card. We'll do the wild card for 1 second. Mets 1.5, just 1.5 over the Phillies now. And the Braves are right behind at 2.5. Mets and Phillies are squaring off this weekend. But today you've got the Mets once again up against the Marlins. And the Phillies are feasting on the Nationals. Atlanta is back in St. Louis. The Brewers, 7.5 in front of the Reds. St. Louis is 10 out. I mean, when they made those trades at the trade deadline, I thought that was an insane move to get rid of anybody to bring these guys in. But they did, and I guess they'll start pointing their ship towards next year. You're not going to overtake the Reds and the Brewers 10 games back with about 55 to play. And then the Giants, they are 3.5 up on the Dodgers. Both of them lost yesterday, and the Padres have inched closer. They're 6 games back. So there you have that. Okay, on this date in 2007, so we're talking about 14 years ago, this is a pretty important one. Barry Bonds ends up tying the great Hank Aaron for the most home runs hit in a career. He homers off of Padres pitcher Clay Hensley in the second inning and ties Hank Aaron's all-time home run record of 755. Of course, he would go on later to break it, finishing this season with 762. Bonds played 22 seasons, 15 for the Giants, 7 for the Pirates. He was a 7-time NL MVP, 12-time Silver Slugger Award winner, 14 All-Star selections, 8 Gold Gloves, 514 stolen bases. He's the only person in the history of Major League Baseball in the 500-500 club, meaning 500 stolen bases and 500 home runs. He is second in WAR all time in baseball, only behind the great Babe Ruth. He hit 347 in college, 45 home runs for Arizona State. His dad was Bobby Bonds. His godfather is Willie Mays. He should be one of the most loved figures in the history of sports. But the steroid scandal, the Balco scandal, he is now entering the 10th and final year, the final attempt to go into the National Baseball Hall of Fame via the popular vote of the sports writers. He had 61% last year. He's got to jump from that to 75%. I don't believe that that's going to happen. I think a lot of writers are still going to say, you cheated the game, you cheated yourself, and you cheated us as fans, and he will not make the Hall of Fame. I do believe the Veterans Committee gets him in 1 year. I think there's going to be enough people in that Veterans Committee before it's all said and done. They're going to say, we were all cheating, and they will let him in. I have mixed feelings on this. I personally would not vote for Barry Bonds because I feel like that if you did the crime, you got to do the time, and cheating your way past Hank Aaron is something I would never be able to forgive. But the sad thing is, before all this started, before all the steroids, he was on his way to the Hall of Fame. He would have gotten to 500 home runs. He would have gotten his 500 stolen bases. That would have put him in the automatic. He would have been the first 100%er. So the whole thing is dumbfounding why he felt the need to cheat, but it was an arms race. He was looking at McGwire. He was looking at Sosa. Now, those two guys, I think without steroids, they're not in the Hall of Fame. McGwire had an incredible end to his career, but he needed that boost. And I believe McGwire was doing steroids the entire way. You look at McGwire when he was a rookie, that dude was freaking, he had veins on veins. He had muscles in places most people don't have places. He was absolutely roided up because he was playing with Canseco out in Oakland. But Barry Bonds would have been in the Hall of Fame, and it's a sad, sad thing. 762 home runs, the most ever, asterisk, obviously. 1,996 RBI, 514 stolen bases. He had 2,588 walks, the most ever. 688 intentional walks, the most ever. And I don't think that's the one number I think will never be broken of his, the 688. Because that is it. When he was in the height of his steroids, teams would just put him on. They wouldn't even think about it. There were teams that walked in a run to prevent from facing him with the bases loaded. But it's a shame that a career like that will never be celebrated the way it should have been because of the steroids. Him and Roger Clemens. I thought Roger Clemens was one of the greatest I ever saw. But the steroid scandals keep them out of the Hall of Fame. We will see you tomorrow. Have another great day. That was this date in history here on Take Me Out to the Ball Game. We do this every week. And today, Wednesday, August 4th, we're one day closer to football. And it is National Chocolate Chip Cookie Day. Get yourself a chocolate chip. And more importantly, it's National Coast Guard Day. And I think that is a branch of the military that's always overlooked. If you know someone in the Coast Guard, give them some love today, because I think they've always get overlooked, and they have arguably one of the most difficult jobs on the planet, keeping our coast safe. We will see you tomorrow.
Take me out to the ball